Hello, all, and welcome to the Gestalt IT Rundown, your weekly look at the IT news of the week. I'm your host, Rich Straffolino. Ordinarily, I'm joined by the one, the only Tom Hollingsworth. However, he is out in the glorious Silicon Valley for Mobility Field Day. So if you want to check out what Tom is up to this week, Wednesday through Friday, we have Mobility Field Day going on. So check out techfieldday.com. It'll be streaming live the whole time, so you can check that out. But let's run right into the news of the week. Now, obviously, in terms of overall tech news, I think the big thing is the big Apple announcement that's going on today. Hard to miss it. It's happening at 1 o'clock, so you don't have to leave the rundown early. We'll finish before then. But big story coming out that Apple had to announce that they were taking out a couple apps from the Mac App Store. The company removed the top-ranked utility Adware Doctor because it was collecting browser histories without consent. Security researchers confirmed that the app sends these as a zip file to a China-based server, and it gets around the Mac OS sandboxing since being a malware scanner in general, Adware Doctor needed to be able to scan your home directory, and as a result, got access to all sorts of files. Patrick Wardle first advised Apple of the terms of service violation on August 12th, but the app was not removed until September 9th. Subsequent to that, examinations found that several apps in the Mac App Store were doing this exact same thing, including Open Any Files, Dr. Antivirus, and Dr. Cleaner. In corporate shakeup news, Alibaba announced that executive chairman and founder Jack Ma will step down from the company over the next 12 months to be succeeded by current CEO Daniel Zhang. A former English teacher, Ma plans to return to education after completely leaving the company and the board in 2020. Ma founded the company in 1999, stepping down as CEO in 2013. This is kind of the Steve Jobs, Bill Gates leaving Microsoft moment for Alibaba, and it's easy if you're based out of the US to not realize just how big of a company. I think a recent valuation had them at $33 billion or something ridiculous like that. And this is a company that since 1999 built itself up from nothing to be just a massive e-commerce giant, not just in China, but really in just most markets outside of the US and Europe. They're the de facto public cloud player in China. That's the problem that a lot of companies are having is how do you compete against Alibaba Cloud? The answer is you kind of don't in a lot of ways, or it's partnered with another Chinese cloud provider. So this is a company that you're going to be hearing a lot about, but this is a major step by them, essentially the founder and kind of guiding voice for them for a number of years, for almost 2 decades here, essentially going to be leaving the company overall by 2020. So interesting news there, and we'll see how it affects the company and their growth going forward. In acquisition news, Intel announced the acquisition of NetSpeed Systems, a maker of SoC design tools and interconnect fabric IP. The company will be rolled into Intel Silicon Engineering Group. Terms of the deal were not disclosed, but combined with the acquisition of eASIC back in July, Intel is making a clear push for the IoT market and to speed up overall chip development into these new areas. And I think this kind of also plays into, obviously Intel's long-term growth strategy, realizing, hey, this x86 thing, it has a ceiling and we're probably at it or close to it, and really exploring a lot of other opportunities. I've been very bullish on what Intel theoretically could do. I'm not saying they will necessarily execute on this, but with their FPGA divisions and that kind of stuff, and these kind of acquisitions to get better tooling for developing IoT and to speed development and to interconnect those really could have a big impact if they ever are able to make their way significantly into the growing IoT market. I think the position of the market right now isn't as important as where it will be in 5 years. I think we're still really nascent, especially in an enterprise perspective on where we are with IoT, but it's only going to be growing. Intel realizes that, making key acquisitions to stay relevant. In Microsoft news, they announced Azure DevOps and Azure DevOps Server, which will be successors to Visual Studio Team Services and Team Foundation Server, respectively. Azure DevOps is a free for open source and projects up to 5 users, providing a continuous integration, continuous deployment workflow called Azure Pipelines, Azure Boards, essentially just a Kanban board kind of thing, Azure Repos, and other developer tools preceded by the word Azure. Existing VSTS users will be upgraded automatically, with Microsoft claiming no loss in functionality. I've seen this reported both as a significant redesign and also just a flat rebranding. DevOps is a word. Microsoft knows that it resonates. So of course they want that associated with Azure. It does seem like this is not just slapping a new coat of paint. It seems like there will be maybe a change in methodology going forward. But overall, I think they're trying, typical Microsoft way, they're not going to massively disrupt existing users. They're just hoping this will grow into something with, continuous getting developers engaged with Azure. Not too surprising, but I thought an interesting move. Wanted to share that for sure. In quantum computing news, startup Rigetti Computing unveiled a quantum cloud service, allowing select partners access to a quantum processor and a quantum software dev kit named Forest. The service will utilize classical computers with hybrid quantum algorithms that make API calls to a 16-qubit processor for specific calculations. So this is more akin to something that D-Wave is doing, where they kind of combine classical and quantum computing, realizing that, hey, it's a lot easier to get started if you're, speaking to a much more typical computer than giving direct quantum access, but kind of deferring to that where it makes sense in those situations. Rigetti expects quantum algorithms to run 20 to 50 times faster. It's not percent, 20 to 50 times faster on QCS. Next year, the service will open up to all customers, and eventually, Rigetti will offer its recently debuted 128-qubit processor on QCS. That is currently the largest, or the processor with the most qubits that has been developed and in production, or at least proven to actually work. Previously, I believe Google had a 72-qubit processor, so a big jump by Rigetti. We will see if people can, find use cases and really kind of demonstrate quantum advantage. That was the other thing to go along with this, and it put this quite in the write-up of the headline. But Rigetti is also offering a kind of like an X prize, a $1 million prize for anyone that can demonstrate a definitive quantum advantage using QCS. So very interesting. Obviously, it's a limited rollout here. I think they're making sure things don't break before they open it up to a wider audience. But this will obviously have a lot of applications for workflows that traditionally are bound up. I'm seeing a lot of chemical analysis, molecular calculations, that kind of stuff that really can benefit from quantum computing. A little bit of uncertainty there. All right, and more acquisition news. Automotive chip maker Renesas announced plans to acquire integrated device technology for $6.7 billion. Renesas already makes about 30% of chips used in the auto industry, second only to NXP Semiconductor. The acquisition of IDT provides them with expertise in analog semiconductors for wireless networks and sensors, key to the emerging autonomous vehicle market. So kind of a smart and forward-looking move by Renesas. The deal still needs to be approved by Chinese and U.S. regulators. I thought this was really interesting considering all the amount of time that we spent on the Broadcom Qualcomm acquisition and the Qualcomm NXP Semiconductor, kind of deferred acquisition. This is kind of a knock-on effect to that. We saw the tendency, or at least the attempt, to massively consolidate the chip market. This is just another move in that step where it seems like the market is going toward the way of consolidation. And Renesas definitely seeing that and trying to kind of be the one-stop shop for what the future of automotive processing is going to need to be. An interesting move there. I did see some criticism that IDT doesn't really have a very strong automotive presence right now. I think that only accounts for like 7 or 8% of their revenue. So relatively small business for IDT. I think it will be incumbent, obviously, upon Renesas to open that up and show that it's applicable to the wider automotive market. Now, I think a lot of the success of this acquisition will depend on where the autonomous driving market is in a couple of years. Right now, we're definitely in the testing phase. I mean, we're not really seeing true level 5 autonomous vehicles. In production, we're really only seeing level 1 vehicles. Maybe you could argue some of the stuff that Tesla is doing hits level 2. And then you have all sorts of regulatory, obviously, right? Regulatory burdens. They're going to need to be met and answered to whether these vehicles will even be allowed. So that may put a damper on some of their expansive plans for automotive vehicles. But definitely an interesting move and a forward-looking move there. It also gets Renesas into a little bit of the data center market. I know IDT, that's where the bulk of their income comes from, is providing chips for more typical data centers. So a little bit of a diversifying of income as well. Smart move, Renesas. All right, and the U.S. House of Representatives passed the Cyber Deterrence and Response Act of 2018, providing for the creation of a database of people and groups involved in foreign cyber attacks. The database would name state-sponsored advanced persistence threats, APT. That's kind of whenever a very sophisticated cyber attack goes down and it's obvious that this would have required, state backing to kind of make it happen, or it has a very, obviously, like a very political motivation behind it. That's kind of the nomenclature that they use there. So the database would name state-sponsored advanced persistent threats and provide a common naming scheme for private groups that track the actors as well. Basically, right now, it's just a hodgepodge of different security organizations creating these lists. A lot of times they come up with slightly different names based on a number of criteria. And so it's actually really hard when these organizations try to work together to say, hey, did you detect this attack from this group? And a lot of like literally just the names are different. And so this is kind of a data problem that this bill hopes to create like kind of a master list for everyone to base that on. And so at least to eliminate that kind of noisiness in that research. Whether will be adopted and successful is another matter. Kind of the idea behind this also is that to provide kind of a name and shame these actors so as a form of deterrence. So I'm not sure how successful it's going to be in terms of advanced persistent threats. But what's perhaps more significant is that they will also bring the names of individuals to the attention of other governmental agencies to take further action. The reporting I was looking at was citing specifically looking at the Treasury Department for certain tax implications to look into that kind of stuff, knowing that maybe individuals are getting state sponsorship and that kind of stuff. Kind of maybe the Al Capone approach to cyber attacks there. And finally, in sad news. It was announced by Plex that they are going to be shutting down their Plex Cloud service on November 30th, 2018. The service allowed users to install Plex service and store media in the public cloud. Plex had some issues getting the service to deliver a smooth customer experience, mainly based on trying to transcode media stored on S3 and other object stores. Basically, what they had to do is spin up their own servers to kind of handle that ingest, do that transcoding, and then deliver that to their users. So a pretty messy and complicated workflow and a lot of places, things where things could go wrong. Originally, it was S3 exclusive. They opened up to other public cloud providers, which I think would just add to the complexity and never really took off. The company had signaled problems with the service a while back, halting new cloud instances since February of this year. So yeah, not too surprising, but Plex is an interesting company. I appreciate what they do. I run a Plex server at my house and never was tempted to go to the cloud way. I like the idea of just kind of paying once and setting up my own hardware and kind of managing that. But, and it may also not align with Plex's long-term goals. They've recently integrated kind of more services into their dashboard. So maybe they don't want to necessarily be a media host, as it were, but more of a single point of distribution for various services. So we will see. Not really IT news. It just makes me sad. I'm sorry, Plex, that you were disappointed. I hope you were not disappointed, though, with this edition of the Gestalt IT Rundown. Now, I think we still have time before the Apple announcement starts. Yeah, we still got about 15 minutes before Apple gets on there and announces a bunch of things that have already leaked several times. But thank you so much for watching the Gestalt IT Rundown. Remember, we're here every Wednesday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time, running down real quick your IT news of the week. If there's a story that you find of interest, you can leave it in the comments here, or you can post it here on the Gestalt IT Facebook page, which is where this video is hosted. You can shoot it to me, email me, rich@gestaltit.com. And you can also send it to me on Twitter at Mr. Anthropology, MR Anthropology, for all sorts of goodness there. Remember, you can also find great IT coverage on gestaltit.com. Check that out. We have new stuff posting all the time. And remember, if you want to see what Tom is up to, he's at Mobility Field Day today. So if you want to see all the live streams from that, we have them going Wednesday today through Friday, which is Friday. You can check that out at techfieldday.com. And we'll also have fully edited videos of that up real soon after that if you can't watch it live. So until next time we meet, remember, everybody, have a super sparkly day.